All right, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. My mission is to raise the awareness of trauma and to support and inspire new trauma therapists just starting out on the trauma-informed journey. I do that with my membership community, Trauma Therapist 2.0, my online courses and workshops, and the Trauma Therapist newsletter. If you're a therapist of any kind and you work with individuals who've been impacted by trauma, I invite you to head on over to my website at thetraumatherapistproject.com. That's thetraumatherapistproject.com. All right, let's get started. Are you ready to do it?
I'm ready to do it.
Okay. All right, so here we go, Jessica. We are recording and we are ready. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. Very excited to have a special guest today, Jessica Culp. Jessica, welcome back.
Thank you, Guy.
All right. So Jessica is a licensed professional counselor who works at Hope Centered Counseling in Savoy, Illinois. Jessica graduated from Lincoln Christian University in 2018, and she specializes in complex trauma. She enjoys giving her energy and time in counseling to a smaller caseload of individuals in order to provide a deeper therapeutic experience from an attachment lens, and often includes emotion-focused, expressive arts, experiential, and psychodrama therapy. This is Jessica's second career, as she worked initially in resource development for 3 local nonprofit organizations, including a food bank, children's home, and a crisis nursery. Jessica has always had a passion for helping others with great care and integrity. She's been listening to the Trauma Therapist Podcast since 2015 and became a member of Trauma Therapist 2.0 in 2016. All right, Jessica, so awesome to have you back here, and really cool to have you back. I mean, we've spoken a few times, you've been on the podcast obviously a few times, and it's really awesome just to get your perspective. So let's kind of dive in here. Before we were recording, I said, what would you like to focus on? And let's take it from there. You shared a quote initially. I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, so I want to revisit a quote that was from the first interview we did. And I don't know what it was about this quote, but when originally when people used to come on here with quotes, I wanted to find the perfect quote. And the one that I used was by John Vanier. And it said, "To love someone is not, first of all, to do things for them, but to reveal to them their beauty and value, to say to them through our attitude, you are beautiful, you are important, I trust you, and you can trust yourself." So I chose that quote, and you had asked me, why that quote, Jessica? And I said, well, this just seems to be like the perfect aim for a therapist to really believe in the client, to extend your trust that they're going to heal themselves. And so when I recently looked back on this quote, and I feel like as I have grown as a therapist, I've also realized how much that quote I needed to take for myself. Mm-hmm. I needed to learn how to love myself. I needed to believe in the beauty and value that I had. I needed to believe that I was beautiful, I was important, and that I could trust myself, which was something that I struggled with my whole life. Yeah.
Well, okay. First of all, yeah, thank you for sharing that. And that's an intense quote, and it makes me feel like it's a great aim to have for someone else. You're saying I wanted to have that for myself in a sense. So share with us what the inadequacy was, and if I can use that word, or how you weren't giving that to yourself or focusing on yourself in that sense.
Yeah, I think a lot of this comes from having not enough secure attachment as a child with my own parents. Parents not giving what they didn't have. And so I was fortunate to have, some really good people in my life when I was growing up, and that was helpful. But ultimately, I ended up, having some places that needed healing in my life as I became an adult. And I was actually a mother very young. And so a lot of my younger, I had my first child when I was a teenager. And so I went from, feeling inadequate as a teenager to sort of saying, okay, well, I have purpose in this other person. And so I really devoted many, many years of my life. And I'm still a parent and I still have children in my house. So I'm still doing that to an extent. But as I became a therapist, and as my children got older, I realized that I had some codependent tendencies that had come out of my childhood that were sort of like I was loving others without loving myself.
I think one can imagine how that would impact being a therapist and you as a therapist. Reminds me of the quote, you can't give to others what you don't have yourself. So how did that manifest?
Yeah.
When you started being a therapist?
Well, before I became a therapist, I had a spiritual experience where I was able to experience my higher power that loved me unconditionally. So that was a really important start, because I think without that, it would have been even harder. But then just in the scope of being a human, I continued to make mistakes and maybe, felt like I was making so many mistakes with friends and family that, maybe they wouldn't recover. It was a sense of like being over responsible for other people. And honestly, I think that that's what drove me to become a therapist, to want to help people. There was the good part of that. And then there was also what was under that I still had to work on, which was, you really can't save anybody, but you can walk with them, but you can only walk with them as far as you've done your own work. So actually, a lot of this work about loving myself and kind of accepting myself has happened in the last couple years. Part of that has been in my own therapy, just being willing to use it all. And I mean that because a lot of times I was getting stuck in a situation where, like, if someone made me mad, I'd just be like, well, they made me mad, and why would somebody make me mad? I'm the nicest person ever. I did that for a lot of years. Right. And everybody that knows me knows how nice I am. So I was able to stay stuck there for a long time. But more recently, like I said, in the last couple of years, I got to a point where I didn't want to be stuck anymore. I felt like I had to move forward. And so I started accepting some of the, I started participating in some psychodrama for my own therapy, some experiential things that sort of got me out of sort of the talk circles I had been putting myself in, and messages that I had kind of continued to live in for a long period of time, and see, maybe the younger part of myself that was hurt or angry, and separate myself a little bit. And that little bit of separation helped me develop compassion for the parts of myself that really I had abandoned. So in that sense, because I've done that, like there were parts of me that I really didn't like, just because I felt like they'd had bad behaviors. They hadn't done the things that I liked. They weren't strong enough. But standing back and saying, no, this makes sense in the context of how old I was and the situations that I've been through, I was able to start giving myself more compassion for, the mistakes I'd made, and just the things that come with being a human.
I was just right about to say, it sounds like these are all very human experiences. I mean, we all have, versions of and degrees of this. And it also sounds like you were really kind of owning a certain level of self-awareness to be able to, first of all, to be in therapy, number one, and then to have compassion for parts of yourself is really admirable. I mean, it's something I think we all would take from during this time. So you were a therapist during this time.
Yes.
Okay. How did you see this play out in the work you were doing with clients?
Well, I think that I was realizing, or I was feeling like my clients were getting stuck, and I could give them a lot of validation, but it always did end up stuck on the self-compassion thing. So absolutely it showed up, because that's where I felt like, I was learning how to care for myself and realizing what a difference that was making. And I felt determined I didn't want to tell people, well, you need to love yourself. Like, it just, I have heard that for a really long time, and it just didn't land very well. So I certainly was feeling like I was seeing a lot of my clients appreciating being validated, appreciating my presence, appreciating some of the psychoeducation I was sharing, even trying some things in between sessions. But so where they were stuck was making me realize that I had to do more of my own work. I was harboring a lot of unforgiveness towards myself, and I was seeing that in my clients as well.
Interesting. And so as you started to do that kind of awareness for yourself, or that work on yourself in that sense, how did that play out?
Well, I think so as I started to do that work on myself, I started to trust myself a little bit more. So what I think was happening is that I am trusting my clients a little bit more, and I am trying to put more power back on their side. Mm. Because I was certainly, again, feeling overly responsible for what was happening to them, whether they were, feeling better fast enough or whatever. And so as I was starting to trust myself, I was saying, hey, this is a partnership. Like, I do trust them. I do think that they can find this for themselves. And so I feel like it's been a good shift, a healthy shift for me.
That's pretty incredible. I mean, that feeling. And again, you've listened to this podcast. So many people have echoed that same sentiment, right? That they've felt initially responsible for their clients and over invested in a sense, such that the client isn't empowered. But that's an amazing place to be in, where you're trusting yourself and your client, allowing that process to unfold.
Well, it is a process for me, because I do, I look back, there are certain aspects of my personality that have been there for a long time. Like I mentioned, and you mentioned, this is my second career. And in my first career and this career, I tend to strive very hard to be the best that I can be in ways that are good and not so good, right? Because then I get into a lot of self-judgment. But I have always had an issue with confidence. Like, I'll tend to read as much as I can and then feel like I'm not good enough to do the job. And so I realize that is one part of me that has to be, it's kind of a weakness of mine, but it's also something that I have to pay attention to and nurture and be understanding about. Mm-hmm. Because of course, none of us are ever going to be perfect, but I do have a right to feel like I'm a professional and that I can help and those kind of things. And sometimes when I get down on myself, I have a really hard time doing that. So I would say that it's a process, and I've felt really encouraged by the work that's happened in the last 2 years, but it's definitely something I think that I'll continue to work on.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing, just being open and sharing those feelings of, insecurity and lack of confidence. I mean, let's face it, so many of us have those feelings, not all the time, and you certainly don't have it all the time, but I think it's very real. Now, how does this play out specifically when trauma comes in to to play here with your clients. Can you talk about that this emerging self-confidence, this emerging awareness and compassion you have for yourself? Has that shifted how you've worked with your clients who've experienced trauma? I'm curious about that.
Well, I think that they probably see it in me that I have more trust in them. So I think previously I feel like, I got into the field wanting to do trauma. So I wasn't like necessarily, I knew I wasn't scared of trauma per se. I don't know, but there's still a lot of scary things about trauma still. So when I would see people having a really hard time or sharing, I would start to get a little nervous still, because I would think, can they handle this emotion? We talk a lot about safety and stabilization and making sure that clients can recover after they've sort of like had experienced a difficult emotion. And so I'm still trying to figure that out. But I think that just the way that I'm talking to my clients and guiding them it comes with more confidence in them that they will be all right. And I think that's really important from an attachment perspective, right? Because the person sitting across from you, the parent or whatever, we want them to be assured that we're going to be okay. It helps us be okay. And so I definitely believe that my clients are making movement that for a period of time, I saw some slumping in, because perhaps they had picked up on some of my ambivalence about them going fully into the emotions.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, and again, a lot of this that we're talking about is sometimes hard to define and name,
Yes,
right? We're talking
true.
about presence and beingness in a sense.
That's
but
true.
You can feel that, what you're talking about here. You can feel it.
When I was in my first practicum, I had a really great supervisor, and she was she was a trauma educator, and she said to me to let people stay in their emotions a little bit more. Don't try to rescue. That is probably, I believe that is, I've probably increased the amount that I can sit with people without rushing in. And I am trying to say that even if I've grown this much, that it's good and it's enough for where I'm at today.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. It just feels like you're honoring your own process in all of this, giving yourself permission to be who you are, where you are, and at the same time having an awareness of the importance of growing.
Yeah. So I have a key here. So this key was part of a training that I did a couple months ago. And we were asked to choose a key and to either like lock something up or open something up that we were like wanting to do next. And initially I was like, well, I need to kind of like, lock this part of me away, because that's sort of like, my trouble spots. And I very strongly afterwards, I said, no, what I need to lock away is my fear of making mistakes in this field. Because I care so deeply for people. I don't want to hurt anybody, but that clamps down on my creativity, who I am, and how I want to grow if I'm scared. And so I really feel like right now, that is what I'm trying to step into with as much power and intentionality that I can, is say, it's okay to be nervous or whatever, but push through it. Don't be scared. You will make mistakes. You will make mistakes. And when you do, you can either apologize for them, you can learn from them, you can correct them, you can do other things with them. But that's and I want to be creative in this field. I don't want to go buy a book. I want to read a book, and then I want to be myself in it. So that's what I want to do right now.
That's awesome. That's exciting. You know, it just reminds me of the quote that a previous guest, Manuela Mishka Reeds, shared, and she was quoting Chogyam Trungpa, who's a Buddhist master. He was the founder of Naropa University in Boulder, Colorado.
Mhm.
And the quote, I just happen to have it here because I just shared it. It says, the basic work of health professionals in general and of psychotherapists in particular is to become full human beings and to inspire full human beingness in other people who feel starved about their lives. And what you're saying really reminds me of that. It's about wanting to, like you're saying, not be scared of being creative, not worry about making mistakes in a sense. And believe me, when I was in graduate school, certainly I was very scared of making mistakes. And I've talked about this before. I felt like I needed to just shove my head within my being with information that was going to do it, and as a result that I'd have the answer. And it was really the opposite of what you're talking about here, which really I think is beautiful, is being able to be yourself, and I've said it before, it's so simple, but it's not easy.
No way. It's been so hard. And despite all my best intentions, I have been really in my way for a long time.
There's such a freedom, though, I think, when this process that you're talking about begins to happen, this confidence that you're talking about begins to happen, because that fear begins to dissipate, right? That fear begins to dissolve in a sense. It's like when I first started and when I was in graduate school, I felt like this process we're talking about, the process of being a therapist, was like having this this crystal glass globe in your hands that you were carrying around, and believe me, you didn't want to stumble because it was going to fall and smash all over the place.
Yeah.
And really, it wasn't until I started talking to other people like you who are sharing what you're talking about, people who've been therapists and had this experience, when they've started talking about the importance of, again, just what you're saying, being themselves, having that confidence, where I realized that it was more not really this fragile ball, but rather this hunk of clay that when you stumble, it's going to get a little smushed, but that's the way life is. And that's beautiful,
Yeah. And maybe if it's smashed a little bit, we can trust whatever's going to happen with that.
Exactly. And, and having that knowledge, having that trust, like you're talking about, having the trust in the other person and the process. I mean, that's what it's about,
Well, and what I want to say about this too is that this got started really when a therapist made me mad as hell. And I was like, how dare that person get me mad?
Well, you got to say more about that. What happened? I can't let you off the hook with that. What happened?
So I was in a group process, and we were supposed to go around and share about how we connected with the person who had talked about with their story, and we were supposed to use I statements. And there was something about that person's story that I could not make an I statement. I started saying, you must have felt this way, or you must have felt this way. And the group therapist said, I need you to not do, like, I need you to make I statements. And she said it in such a way that I was like I just felt shame, I think. But I was really, initially I was like hurt because I was trying to be vulnerable. It felt vulnerable. And then I got really mad. I mean, I was like blazing fire, eyes at this woman. And I was really mad because I wanted to go to this training so bad. And I was like, great, my time hasn't come up to do my group thing, and I'm not going to be able to do my group thing because I'm so mad about this particular situation. So the day got done, I went back to my place where I was supposed to be, and we had done this other thing earlier in the day where we kind of like talked about our genograms and talked about our roles. And I realized that sometimes I've played the victim in the past. And when I do, I like to call my sister, and my sister will reassure me that I was a nice person and the person shouldn't have made me mad. And so I went home and I was like, I wanted to call her. And I did. And I told her I was mad, and she reassured me. And I was like, but I don't want to stay here. I said to my sister, I said, I knew you were going to reassure me, and I don't want to stay here. And so I got off the phone and I wrestled with it all night long. And I got up the next day and I still couldn't figure out what was going on. I finished I got to do my group thing. Wasn't real happy about it because I wasn't feeling like I could trust the situation. I was still really defended. And the group facilitator came up to me and she said at the end of it, and she goes, if you felt shame or whatever about this thing, like, it's okay to feel that way. And if I had something to do with that, I'm sorry. And she gave me a hug. And that, in that moment, gave me enough repair so that when I was on my way home, I realized what had happened in a very different way. I realized that a young part of me had been hurt and that an older part of me had come out to protect me. And so when I realized that, I had a whole new paradigm of understanding for myself. But it was a very painful process. So in the end, this is why now, and I've had several different things since then, I say, I will use it all. I will use it when I'm offended. I will use it when my feelings get hurt. I will use it when I feel ashamed, if I can, because I can grow from it. I can learn from it, and it'll make me a stronger person, and it'll make me love myself more. And at the end of the day, if I love myself more, I can love not only my clients who are so important to me, but my family at home that is really important to me and who I'm really trying to break generational stuff with too. So.
Wow. Incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that story. And as you're sharing it, I'm realizing you're a pretty incredible storyteller. I mean, and the way you're able to relate this to this whole process of being a therapist and working with people who've been impacted by trauma. Yeah, I mean, this is what I love doing on this podcast, Jessica. And here you are just opening up. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty inspiring.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I mean, to be able to take that hurt, and that shame, and to work through that process. I mean, that's not easy to do.
It sucked.
It sucks.
It sucked and I hated it. But then I'm just like, and in the end, I'm so grateful for it because I don't have any resentment towards that therapist. Like I totally get it. And it gives me grace to say, if I make someone mad, I will trust them to learn something from it. Mm-hmm. And so actually I do talk to my clients, and I've been trying to be honest about, I said, there will be times when I might make you mad. Mm-hmm. Let's use it.
Right. Yeah, it's really cool. It just feels like, you're talking about appreciating all the ups and downs and the quote unquote, the ugly bits and the beautiful bits, and being able to use it and honor it all. That's what I think is so amazing that's what I think is the essence of being genuine, being able to sit there amidst all of that. It's like one of my guests said, Joseph Bobro, he said, it's not a matter of, if you're going to get triggered, you will get triggered, but to have done the work, in a sense, the exploration before you do, such that while you're sitting there and you do get triggered, you're able to not just, withstand it, but to use it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, look, how I know people are going to be listening to this and they're just going to go, oh my God, I got to get in touch with this person. How do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, people can email me at jessicac@hope-center.com.
Okay.
So Jessica C is in cat at hope-center.com.
So you're
I'm
working
on LinkedIn.
Okay, you're on LinkedIn as well. Okay. And you're working at this, was this a clinic? Is this a facility?
This is a group private practice.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm really excited because I'm going to start. One thing that I've been doing in the last couple of years is getting some experiential and psychodrama training. And there's really not much of that in this area. And so early next year in January, I'm planning on starting to do some group workshops in this town.
Awesome.
And I'm really excited about it. I think, that was one thing where I was like, I don't know enough. I'm not sure if I can do it. And I've decided I must.
Well, good. Yeah, I'm smiling because I felt the same way with my own experience, and you'd be awesome. You'd be awesome at it. And
thank you. I like hearing that.
Definitely you would. You should. You have a way of sharing stories, personal stories, that is really not only comforting, but I think helpful, and can be helpful for a lot of therapists who haven't got to that point yet.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I'm
awesome.
excited. I'm gonna do it.
Well, let me know. I'll help get the word out. Look, Jessica, thank you so much. It's awesome talking to you. We'll continue this process.
All right.
And we'll set up a time to speak in the new year.
Awesome. Well, you enjoy the Pacific Northwest out there.
I will. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you so much for listening and supporting this podcast. And if you'd like to join the hundreds of other therapists who are each month keeping up to date and informed and inspired about what's going on in the world of trauma, I'd love to invite you to head on over to the Trauma Therapist newsletter. That's the traumatherapistnewsletter.com.